Good morning, everyone. So it's already 11 o'clock. So let's start with a new topic, new unit. That is unit number 3. And the first topic in that it is body fluids and the blood. Okay. So this topic is very important in the exam point of view as 25 marks worth question they will be asked from this particular topic. So earlier two units, that is unit number 1 and unit number 2, the questions which are going to be asked, they are of worth 21 marks. 8 marks worth question will be from unit number 1 and 13 marks worth question from unit number 2. And if you compare the both first and second unit, the combined marks are only 21 as compared to the marks which are allotted to this particular unit, they are 25. Okay, so most of the questions they will be asked from this particular topic, that is body fluids and the blood, and the other topic from the unit number 3, it is the lymphatic system. Okay, so let's start with body fluids and the blood. First of all, we are going to see some basic terminologies related to the body fluids. They are not there in your syllabus, but they need to be taught as they will form the basis of the things which are to come. Okay, so let's start. So these are all the contents of it. So first of all, we are going to discuss about body fluids. So what are body fluids, definition of it, what are different components of it. Okay, the next point that we are going to consider, it is composition and the functions of the blood. Then third is hemopoiesis. Fourth one is formation of hemoglobin. The next one is anemia. Then we are going to see in short about anemia. Only the definitions related to various different types of anemia and the causes of anemia. The next is mechanisms of coagulation. Okay, so this point is very much important in exam point of view. That is mechanism of coagulation, then hemopoiesis and formation of hemoglobin, which are the most likely questions for the 10-mark question, which is there from this particular topic. Okay, the next is blood grouping, RH factors, transfusion and its significance. Okay, so a new topic which is there, which is mentioned over here, it is erythroblastosis fetalis and hemolytic disease of newborn. Okay, so both of these they are one and the same thing. They are not mentioned in your syllabus that we need to teach you this, but as per the orientation of University of Mumbai, this point needs to be covered. Okay, as it is connected to this, that is blood grouping and all, so that's why we need to learn this particular point, that is erythroblastosis fetalis. Then next is disorders of blood. Okay, so these disorders of blood, this is part of, this is there in your pathophysiology syllabus of second semester. Okay, so there it will be covered. We won't be learning anything about disorders of blood in this HAP1. Okay, so it is as per the Mumbai University orientation program. Okay, and the last point that we are going to see, it is reticuloendothelial system. Okay, so let's start with the first point, that is body fluids. So body fluids, the total amount of fluid in the body is approximately 70% of the body weight. Okay, in newborn this amount or this percent it goes up, that above 90% of the body weight in newborn, it is made up of body fluids. Okay, so body fluid has been divided into two compartments. That is the first compartment, that is intracellular fluid, which, uh, which we have already seen in brief about ICF. It is the fluid which is present inside the cell, and 55% of the total body water is the ICF. So if we consider the body fluids are 100%, then out of 100%, 55% is intracellular fluid. So rest is the other compartment, that is extracellular fluid, the fluid which is present outside the cell, and it is 45%. Okay, so 55% is intracellular and 45% is extracellular. Okay. So, comparative view of the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid, it is shown over here. So, this is, if you can see, this is the cell. This is another cell over here. This is plasma. Plasma is nothing but the part of the blood only. We are going to see in detail what is plasma. Okay, so what is whatever is there inside the cell, we call it as intracellular fluid. Okay, and whatever outside the cell, it is nothing but extracellular fluid. So the plasma will be also the part of the extracellular fluid, and the interstitial compartment on which contains the interstitial fluid will also be the part of the extracellular fluid. Okay, so extracellular fluid, it has five subunits. Okay, so it has, unlike that of intracellular fluid which is a sole entity, but extracellular fluid has five subunits. So the first subunit here, it is interstitial fluid. Okay, so what is interstitial fluid? It is present between the cells. Okay, so this word is important, that is it is present between the cells, and it comprises of approximately 80% of the ECA. Okay, so plasma, second subunit of the extracellular fluid is plasma, and location of plasma, it is present in the blood. So approximately 20% of the ECF is plasma. Okay, so third subunit of the extracellular fluid is fluid which is present in bones. Okay, then fourth subunit is fluid which is present in dense connective tissue. So in water fluid in the cartilage, it is also a part of extracellular fluid. And there is one more concept, or one more subunit of the extracellular fluid, that is transcellular fluid. And the example of transcellular fluid is the fluid which is present in the eye, so that is intraocular fluid. Then fluid which is present in gastrointestinal tract, we call it as digestive juices, and these digestive juices, they comprise of many of the digestive enzymes which are secreted by a variety of exocrine glands. The main gland which secretes the digestive juice is the exocrine pancreas. Okay, so next is fluid which is present in urinary tract, also is a type of or example of transcellular fluid. Then cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this cerebrospinal fluid, it is present or part of the central nervous system, and we are going to see in detail about cerebrospinal fluid in next semester in the subject, that is human anatomy physiology 2. Okay, so next is synovial fluid in joints. We have already seen what is synovial fluid. It acts like a lubricant, and it is present in the synovial cavity which is present in the joints. Okay, so next is the serous fluid. Okay, so moving forward, now the comparison between the body fluid which is in the male and female, that how much is the body fluid comprises of. It is like comparison between two genders. Okay, so in females, the it consists of approximately 45% solids and 55% of the body weight is of the fluids. In men, in males, the solids, the percentage decreases to 40% and the fluids percent increase to the 60%. Okay, so what are these fluids made up of? So two-third of it is made up of intracellular fluid, that is ICA, and the one-third of it is extracellular fluid. Okay, so in extracellular fluid also, main two subunits of it is 80%. It is interstitial fluid which is present between the cells, and the 20% is in the plasma. As it is shown in a red color, it indicates that plasma is part of blood. Okay, so next is composition of body fluids. Okay, so what apart from the water, what body fluid consists of? It consists of organic substances and the inorganic substance. So what organic substances it consist of? That is, first one is glucose, then amino acid, then fatty acids, uh, fats, then hormones, then enzymes, then lipids, then proteins. Okay, and the inorganic substances, when we talk, these are mainly the cations and anions. So sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, phosphate, and sulfate. Okay, so next is composition only. We are going to see only the major cation and anions of the these body fluids. Okay, so the most abundant cation which is present, it is sodium. Okay, so where you will find mostly this sodium in the ECF. Okay, so it is most abundant cation of ECF. Okay, so it is the functions played by the sodium are the muscle contraction. Then second most important function is the impulse transmission, and lastly the fluid and electrolyte balance. Okay, these particular points we are going to discuss in the chapter that is urinary system, again which is part of HAP2. So here only it is introductory point. At that particular moment we will be studying in detail about this. Okay, the next most abundant cation is potassium, and it is most abundantly present in the ICF. Okay, that is intracellular fluid. So this potassium is responsible for the maintenance of membrane potential at resting stage. Okay, so again responsible for the action potential. So in action potential also, the repolarization phase of it, one second, repolarization repolarization phase of it is because of the movement of the potassium, and in case of sodium it is depolarization phase. Okay, so this potassium is also responsible for maintenance of intracellular volume. Okay, so that is volume of fluid which is present intracellularly. The maintenance of it is because of presence of potassium. Okay, so also this potassium is responsible for the regulation of pH. So next about anion, so it is chloride. Okay, so this chloride regulates the osmotic pressure. So what is the osmotic pressure, we are going to see in brief in next few slides. Okay, so it forms hydrochloric acid in gastric acid. So whatever gastric acid which is formed or which is present in stomach, the part of it is chloride. So this chloride, it helps or it combines with the hydrogen and is responsible for the formation of hydrochloric acid. Okay, so next is anions, which are most common, that is the proteins and the phosphate. So when we talk about phosphate, uh, these phosphate, they come from the DNA. Okay, so if you remember the cross linking in the DNA structure, the double helix, it is because of the phosphate, that bond which is present in between that. So this phosphate, it comes from the DNA. Okay, so the sodium potassium pump, it plays major role in keeping the potassium high inside the cell and sodium high outside the cell. Okay, so the sodium potassium pump which we have seen, so when we say or when we use the pump as the word, it is related to the active transport. Okay, so active transport, if you remember, it utilizes ATP. Okay, so why it utilizes ATP? Because it is transporting the ions against their concentration gradient. So as per the concentration gradient, sodium is supposed to move from outside the cell, that is from ECF to ICF. But this sodium potassium pump, it transports the sodium which has moved inside the cell, it moves it outside, that is from inside the cell to outside, and potassium vice versa, that is it moves potassium from outside the cell to inside the cell, that is against its concentration gradient. So next, concentration of body fluid. So this concentration of body fluids, it is expressed in three ways. So the first way of expression is osmolality. Second way of expression is osmolarity, and the third way is of tonicity. Okay, so let's see what is osmolality. So it is measure of fluid's capability to create osmotic pressure is called osmolality or osmotic or osmolar concentration of a solution. So it is like a number of particles that are dissolved in the kg of the solvent. Okay, so that is osmoles per kg. Please understand the difference between osmolality and the osmolarity. Osmolarity is it is expressed in liters. Okay, so that is liters of the solvent that contains the amount of particles or number of particles dissolved, that is osmoles per liter, and it is osmolarity. Here the per sign is, it is kg, and in here it is liter. So that is difference between osmolality and the osmolarity. Okay, so that is the only difference between these two terminology. So this term is used to express the osmotic concentration, and it is the number of particles, that is osmoles per liter of a solution. Okay, so what is tonicity? It is measure of effective osmolality. Okay, so we are going to, depending on this tonicity definition, we are going to define three terminologies, that is isotonic, hypotonic and hypertonic. Okay, so what are these isotonic solution? That it has the same effective osmolality as that of the body fluids. So hypotonic has less effective osmolality than body fluids, and hypertonic have greater effective osmolality than body fluids. So what it means? So what is this same osmolality, less osmolality, and greater osmolality. I will show with an example of it. Okay, so what we have done over here, you can see this blue colored thing, it is the solution. Okay, so we have kept the uh, RBCs, that is red blood cells, into this solution. So what type of solution? That is hypertonic solution, isotonic solution, and hypotonic solution. So what the concentration of particles of the solution or concentration of solution has effect on the cells, the general structure of cells, that's what we are going to study. So when the hypertonic solution is used to suspend the RBCs, what happens? The flow of water, it increases, or the direction of water flow, it is in from inside of the cell to the outside. Why the water flows outside of the cell? Because the solution which surrounds the RBCs, it contains more amount of dissolved solutes than that of the cell. Okay, so as the number of solutes are more, the water flows in this direction so as to equilibrate the concentration of the fluid which is inside the cell to that of the outside. So the equilibrium or the homeostasis, that is what required. So always it is internal environment with which the body tends to maintain the homeostasis or the equilibrium condition. So as the concentration of fluid which is present outside the RBCs is more, what happens in this case? The fluid which is there inside the cell, it moves out in order to maintain or create the equilibrium condition across the cell wall. But when it is happening, the amount of water that moves inside, it is negligible as compared to the amount of fluid that moves outside. So what happens? It leads to the crenation of the cells. Crenation means what? The cells, they shrink. Okay, the cells, they shrink in size, and you can see crenation, crenated structure of the cells. Okay, so this process of movement of water outside the cell, we call it as exoosmosis or exosmosis. Okay, so ex, when the prefix is x, we can say it is moving out. Okay, so we have also studied this exocytosis. Okay, that is something was moving outside the cell. So here, as the osmosis, you should remember this term, that is osmosis. Osmosis term is related to the movement of fluid, not movement of solutes. Okay, diffusion, it is related to movement of solutes, but the osmosis word, it is related to movement of fluid. Okay, so in hypertonic solution, as the fluid is moving out of the cell, that is the water, that's why the cells shrink. Please understand this very clearly. The shape of the cell, it depends on amount of fluid which is present inside it. And as in case of this hypertonic solution suspension of the RBCs, as the fluid is moving outside the cell, the fluid which is present inside the cell, it is getting decreased. The amount of it is getting decreased. That's why the crenation. In case of isotonic fluid, as the concentration of the fluid or the solution which is outside the cell, it is same as that of the concentration of fluid which is inside the cell. What happens? The amount of fluid that moves out of the cell is equivalent to amount of fluid that moves inside the cell. So this is equivalent. So the H2O, that is water, that moves inside the cell is equivalent to water that moves outside the cell. And as this amount is the same, volume is the same, that's why the cells, they keep the normal shape intact. Okay, so that is the thing. So you can see the shape of the RBCs, it is maintained. But in case of hypotonic solution, what happens? The amount of water that moves, or the movement of water, is in opposite direction of the hypotonic. Why? Because the solution that surrounds the RBCs has less amount of solutes as compared to that of the RBCs. So as it contains less amount of solutes as the RBCs, the water from outside the cell, it moves inside the cell, and thus the what happens, the cell becomes pericytic. That means they become bulged, they bulge in shape. Okay, so bulging can be seen, and it the process is known as endosmosis. And so that is movement of fluid from outside the cell to inside of the cell to maintain the equilibrium. Okay, so what is significance of body fluids then? Then these body fluids, they play important role in homeostasis. We have already seen what is homeostasis. So body cells survive in fluid medium called internal environment or milieu interior. So it is like French terminologies for the internal environment. So water not only forms major constituent of internal environment, but also plays an important role in the homeostasis. Okay. Second function body fluids play, that is they act as transport mechanism. Okay, so body water forms the transport medium by which nutrients and other essential substances enter the cells. Okay, and unwanted substances come out of the cells. So it is like to and fro movement that happens across the cell wall. That is the important nutrients and other solutes like oxygen, they are transported inside the cell, and whatever metabolic reactions that happen inside the cell, it creates metabolic waste, and these waste products are then transported outside the cell by means of movement of body fluid. Okay, so next is metabolic reaction. So water inside the cells form the medium for various metabolic reactions which are necessary for growth and functional activities of the cell. Okay, so the metabolic reactions also that happen inside the cell, they require these body fluids, and with the help of body fluids, they facilitate the growth and functional activities of the cell. The next function of the body fluids is texture of tissues. So, water inside the cell ensures cell's texture. That means, however, whatever the cell looks like, it is because of the body fluids. Okay. The next, temperature regulation. Water present inside the cell plays vital role in maintaining the normal body temperature. Okay, so we have also seen this in case of integumentary system, the thermoregulation function of it, that whenever the body, if you are present in, currently it is summer season. Okay, it's hot outside. Okay, so if the body heats from inside, the blood flow to the skin increases. Okay, so as blood flow to the skin increases, whatever heat is there inside the body, it is then transported to the skin, that is outermost covering, and from there in the heat which is carried by the blood, it is then dissipated to the external environment. So in this example, if you see, the it is the body fluid only that is carrying or that is transporting the heat from inside of the body to outside. Okay, so that is the temperature regulation function of the body fluid. So let's start with the actual point, that is blood and its components. Okay, so blood, which is a type of connective tissue, it has two components. That is, first component is the blood plasma, and the second component is the formed elements of the blood. Okay, so what are the formed elements of the blood? It consists of three, that is red blood cells, which is the majority portion of it, then white blood cells and the platelets. So in this diagram, if you can see, if you take out the blood sample and if you centrifuge it, then the uppermost or the supernatant fluid which you see, it is the plasma. Okay, so and whatever remains below, or the at the junction of these two, that is plasma and the red blood cell, you can see buffy coat, which is composed of white blood cells and the platelets, and below to this you can find the red blood cells. Okay, so these are separated depending on their density differences. So as the red blood cells, you can find at the bottom they have the highest density, and the plasma, as it has lesser density as compared to the other two, that is the white blood cells, platelets and the red blood cells, you will find plasma making up the supernatant layer. Okay, so the functions and the properties of the blood. So functions of the blood, if you have to remember, you have to remember the code, that is TRP. Okay, so T stands for the transport, R stands for the regulation, and the P stands for protection. So what it transports is that it transports oxygen, carbon dioxide, then various nutrients, then hormones, then heat and the waste products. Okay, so it transports all of this, that is oxygen from the exterior to interior, carbon dioxide from interior to exterior, again nutrients from the gastrointestinal tract to the interior to the cells, then hormones from the endocrine glands to the site of action, then heat depends on the what is the external environment is. In case of summer season, the heat will be carried from interior to exterior, and in case of winter season, it will be carried from exterior to interior. Okay, so waste products, again they will be transported from interior to exterior. So what it regulates? It regulates pH. Again we are going to see this, how it regulates the pH when we will see the urinary system. Okay, then also it regulates the body temperature, and also it regulates the water contents of the cell. Okay, so this third function of it, it is protection. So it protects against the blood loss by means of clotting process, which we are going to see in detail in next few slides. Then it protects against the diseases through phagocytic mechanisms played by the white blood cells. So and also it protects against proteins such as antibodies. So these antibodies produced by the B lymphocytes, so which is part of adaptive immunity, then interferons and the complement system. Okay, so the physical characteristic of the blood, The first characteristic is that it is denser and more viscous than the water. Okay, so temperature is 38 degrees centigrade. Okay, so 37 plus or minus 2 degrees centigrade, that will be the temperature. Okay, so the slightly alkaline pH it has, that is 7.35 to 7.45. So the color of the blood, in case of deoxygenated blood, it is dark red in color. If it is oxygenated, then it is bright red in color. Then blood volume in average adult male, it is 5 to 6 liters, and in average size adult female, it is 4 to 5 liters. Okay, so let's see the functions of blood elements. The red blood cells, or alternatively known as erythrocytes, they transport the oxygen from lungs to body cells and carbon dioxide from body cells to lungs. Okay, so white blood cells, or they are alternatively known as leukocytes, there are several types of it, that is neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes and lymphocytes. So lymphocytes further classified into T lymphocyte and the B lymphocyte and the natural killer cells. So these leukocytes, they protect the body from invading pathogens and other foreign substances. So the white blood cells, they form the defense mechanism of our body. Okay. So the next type of formed elements of the blood are platelets, and one important characteristic of it, that is they don't have the nucleus unlike other types of cells. Okay, so they release chemicals that promote blood clotting when blood vessels are damaged. Okay,